For months, I'd sense a subtle shift in our relationship, a gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. It began with little things, details I tried to dismiss as insignificant. She started staying out late with friends, her explanations vague and breezy, brushed off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Then came the sudden enthusiasm for long, solitary trips. Weekends away she'd never craved before, leaving me with nothing but a quick text about needing space or time to think. And the way she looked at me, it changed, once warm and familiar. Her gaze grew distant, like she was seeing to me rather than at me. I couldn't put my finger on it exactly, but the thread that had always tethered us, the unspoken bond we'd nurtured, felt like it was fraying, slipping out of my grasp no matter how tightly I tried to hold on. Her name was Veronica. We'd been together for over 5 years, a stretch of time that had woven our lives into something I thought was unbreakable. We had love, or at least I believe we did. We had stability, routines that felt comforting in their predictability, a partnership that seemed to hum along smoothly. To me, it was the kind of connection people looked at with quiet envy, the sort you don't realize is rare until it's gone. I'd always assumed she felt the same. We'd built a life together, a foundation of trust and shared moments, and I thought that meant something enduring. But I was wrong. One evening, I came home from work, my mind still tangled in the day's mundane stresses, and found her in the living room. She was perched on the couch, her phone clutched in her hand, her posture stiff with a tension I hadn't noticed before. She didn't hear me come in, too absorbed in whatever was on her screen, her thumbs hovering, her lips pressed into a tight line. When she finally looked up and saw me standing there, something flickered in her expression. It wasn't surprise or guilt, but a kind of guarded resolve, like she'd been rehearsing this moment. "I've been thinking about something," she said, her voice careful, testing, as if she were dipping a toe into icy water to gauge its depth. I sat down beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her, but far enough to sense the wall she'd already begun to build. "What's on your mind?" I asked, my tone light despite the unease curling in my chest. She took a breath, then said it. "I think we need to have an open relationship." The words hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. My brain stalled, refusing to process them fully. An open relationship? Veronica, my Veronica, the woman I'd shared half a decade with, was suggesting we invite other people into the space we carved out for just the two of us. I blinked, my mouth dry, and managed to stammer, "Wait, you mean with other people?" "Sex with other men." She didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. "Yes," she said, her voice steady now, gaining confidence. "I've been feeling like I need to explore other parts of myself, my sexuality. I want to figure out who I am beyond just us." Her words sliced through me, sharp and cold, cutting deeper with every syllable. All I could think about was how fundamentally wrong this felt. We built something real, years of late-night conversations, quiet mornings tangled in sheets, promises whispered in moments of vulnerability. And now she was framing it as a limitation, a cage she needed to break free from. Intimacy with other men, physical, emotional, whatever it was, felt like a betrayal of everything I'd poured into us. It wasn't just a suggestion. It was a demolition of the life I thought we both valued. I sat there, staring at her, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. I didn't shout. I didn't lash out. The room was so quiet, I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the thudding of my own pulse in my ears. "You're serious about this?" I finally asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to keep it steady. She nodded, her eyes locked on mine, unwavering but tinged with something. Uncertainty, maybe, like she was waiting for me to nod along and make this easy. "I think it could make us stronger in the long run," she added. I need this." Her reasoning landed like a stone in my gut. It didn't feel like a plea for understanding or a bridge to some deeper connection. It felt final, like a decision she'd already made without me. My hands went cold, my thoughts racing in circles. Stronger? How could sharing her with strangers, letting her seek out pieces of herself in other people's beds, possibly strengthen what we had? I stood up, the movement slow and deliberate, and looked down at her. "I can't do that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She frowned, tilting her head slightly. What do you mean? We can figure out together. No! I said again, louder this time, the resolve hardening in my chest. I'm not going to share you with other men. If that's what you need, then I'm not the one for you. I'm out. I turned and walked toward the door, my footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. She called my name, her voice spiking with a sudden edge of panic. Wait, please. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. What she'd asked of me had shattered the fragile illusion I'd been clinging to, the hope that we could somehow fix whatever had been breaking between us. I went to our bedroom, her bedroom now, I suppose, grabbed a duffel bag and stuffed it with clothes, my toothbrush, a few books I couldn't leave behind. The essentials. It wasn't a grand exit, no slamming doors or tearful goodbyes. It was quiet, methodical. I walked out into the night, the air cool against my skin, and didn't look back. For days after, she tried to reach me. My phone buzzed with missed calls, texts piling up, some pleading, some angry, all unanswered. She even showed up at my apartment once, knocking until her knuckles must have ached, but I stayed silent behind the door, unwilling to let her in. She crossed a boundary I couldn't unsee, a line that didn't just fracture our trust, but obliterated it entirely. What surprised me most wasn't her persistence. It was her apparent shock at my reaction. She didn't seem to grasp the weight of what she proposed, as if she'd expect me to shrug and say, "Sure, go ahead, sleep with whoever you want." But I wasn't wired that way. I'd given her everything, my time, my heart, my loyalty, and she treated it like a negotiable contract, something she could amend on a whim. As the days turned into weeks, I started piecing together what happened next to the grapevine, mutual friends, acquaintances who couldn't resist sharing the fallout. Veronica didn't waste time. She dove headfirst into the life she'd envisioned, seeing other men, chasing the freedom she claimed she needed. At first, I heard she was giddy about it, flaunting her newfound independence like a badge of honor. But that didn't last. The story shifted. She wasn't thriving. She was unraveling. What she'd framed as self-discovery turned into a spiral she couldn't control. Friends told me she'd changed. Her confidence, once radiant and unshakable, dimmed. The spark that had always drawn people to her faded. She was still beautiful, still magnetic in her way, but there was a hollowness now, a restlessness that no amount of fleeting encounters could fill. It was almost poetic in a bittersweet way. She'd wanted to explore, to find herself in the arms of strangers, but instead she lost everything that had grounded her. The love we'd shared, the trust I'd given her, the partnership she'd taken for granted. It all slipped away, and she was left grasping at shadows. I heard she started second-guessing herself, her self-esteem crumbling as a reality of her choices sank in. The attention she craved didn't satisfy her. It only highlighted what she'd thrown away. She'd always been the life of the party, the woman who lit up a room, but now she seemed to drift, a ghost of the person I'd once known. Months later, an email landed in my inbox. It was long, rambling, raw. She apologized, over and over, her words dripping with regret. She said she'd been wrong, that she'd mistaken her restlessness for something noble, something worth pursuing. She begged for another chance, promising she'd learned her lesson, that she understood now what she'd lost. But I read it with a detachment I hadn't expected. The hurt had dulled, the anger faded. What lingered was indifference. I didn't hate her. I didn't pity her, either. I just didn't care anymore. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. I'd walked away to protect what little self-respect I'd left, and I wasn't about to trade that for a second act in a story that had already ended. Her world had collapsed, but not because I'd left. It was because she dismantled herself. In chasing some elusive version of herself, she discarded the one person who'd seen her clearly, loved her fully. By the time she realized it, I was already gone, building a life without her. I didn't gloat over her regret or dwell on her mistakes. I moved forward, content with the knowledge that I'd chosen myself over a compromise that would have hollowed me out. She couldn't do the same, and that was her burden to carry, not mine.